The Wizarding World is a lie. The most beloved fantasy series of a generation is riddled with holes so huge you could fly a Hungarian horntail through them, and the rules of magic break at the most critical moment. Can you handle the truth? You think you know every Harry Potter plot hole? The misted thestrals, the Marauder's map mistakes, the time travel headaches? Think again. These are the moments where the logic of the Wizarding World quietly packs its trunk, grabs a broom, and flies off without explanation. We're diving into the most baffling yet often overlooked holes in the canon. 1. The Secret Keeper, oversight. First up, the original sin. Why James and Lily weren't their own secret keepers. The Fidelius charm hides a secret, like a location, within the soul of one chosen person, the secret keeper. That person is the only one capable of revealing the secret protected by the spell. When the Potters used the charm, they chose Peter Pettigrew, but the books never explain why they didn't just keep their own secret. Nothing in canon prevents it. The charm doesn't forbid self-keeping, and there's no magical rule stating it must be someone else. This means the Potters could have easily become their own secret keepers and avoided betrayal altogether. Instead, they entrusted their lives to the least trustworthy man in Britain. Given the result, it was definitively not the brightest move in wizarding history. 2. The selective trace problem. Next, the ridiculous inconsistency of the trace at Privet Drive. The Ministry monitors underage wizards through an enchantment called the Trace, which detects when magic is performed near them. The fatal flaw? It can't tell who cast the spell, only where it happened. In Chamber of Secrets, when Dobby levitates a cake, the Ministry assumes Harry did it. Yet, in Order of the Phoenix, members of the Order openly use spells at Privet Drive to pack Harry's belongings, and the Trace conveniently forgets to tattle. The system that punished Harry for something he didn't do suddenly becomes blind to Tonks, whipping her wand around like a house elf on caffeine. This inconsistency suggests the Trace works selectively, or more likely, Rowling didn't fully map out its mechanics at the time. 3. The food multiplication solution. Speaking of survival, let's talk about why the trio didn't multiply food in Deathly Hallows. Hermione clearly states that food cannot be conjured from nothing, but it can be multiplied or summoned from elsewhere. By that logic, the trio could have simply multiplied what little food they had instead of starving through half the book. Multiplying food is a legitimate magical practice, proven during the Great Hall feasts. The only explanation given is none. Not even Hermione, a walking encyclopedia of spells, brings it up. Maybe multiplied bread tastes like disappointment. Or maybe the author just didn't want her heroes well-fed and logical. Either way, it's a hole wide enough to drive a night bus through. 4. Fred and George's blind spot. This is a classic. Fred and George missing Peter Pettigrew on the Marauder's map. The Marauder's map tracks every person in Hogwarts. Name, location, and all. Fred and George owned it for years and gave it to Harry. Yet somehow, they missed a man named Peter Pettigrew sleeping in Ron's bed every night as Scabbers. Even by Weasley standards, that's some next-level obliviousness. The only in-world fix comes from a fan theory suggesting that only the original Marauders could see each other's name. Unfortunately, Rowling never confirmed it. Canonically, the map shows everyone. 5. The Veritaserum oversight. A monumental failing of the justice system. Why the Ministry never used Veritaserum. Veritaserum is a powerful truth potion that forces the drinker to answer questions honestly. The Ministry of Magic owns it, regulates it, and apparently completely forgets it exists during every major trial. After the First Wizarding War, Death Eaters escaped justice by claiming the Imperious Curse. Sirius Black was imprisoned without trial, while literally laughing in shock. If the Ministry had used Veritaserum, they could have sorted the guilty from the innocent in minutes. Instead, they relied on vibes and hysteria. The result is a justice system so broken, it makes Azkaban look organized. Why risk a magical war when a simple truth potion could have fixed decades of injustice? 6. The Basilisk Fang paradox. And a final, quietly devastating one. How the Basilisk Fang didn't destroy the Horcrux inside Harry. In Chamber of Secrets, Harry is stabbed by a Basilisk Fang. The venom is lethal and should destroy any Horcrux it touches. A fact confirmed later when the trio uses those same fangs to obliterate several of them. Yet Harry's internal Horcrux survives. Fawkes's tears cure the poison, but they shouldn't undestroy a Horcrux once it's already been damaged by the venom. The logical outcome is that the Horcrux should have died when Harry was bitten. Rowling never fully explains this. Some say Harry had to fully die for the Horcrux to perish. Whatever the case, the rules of Horcrux destruction shift here faster than Snape's mood. The Wizarding World is full of wonder, but these quiet disasters show that even the tightest magical logic has its weak spots. Sometimes, the only explanation is the plot needed it to to happen. Which of these plot holes drives you the most crazy? Let us know in the comments below. Can you imagine magic so dark that even followers of Voldemort refuse to cast it? What kind of terrifying power would make a killer throw away their wand or choose prison over using a spell that guaranteed instant victory? The true horror of the dark arts isn't just the death it causes, but the irreversible damage it inflicts on the soul of the wizard who wields it. The unseen price. Dark magic. Too corrupting for the darkest wizard. The dark arts are a spectrum. On one end, you have the common curses and jinxes, nasty but manageable. On the other, you have the unforgivable curses, spells that require a fundamental severance from your own humanity. But then, there is a third secret corner of magic. Spells so utterly depraved, so psychologically shattering, that even the most hardened Death Eaters wouldn't touch them. They weren't feared because they were illegal. They were feared because they were too effective, too corrupting, and fundamentally too easy to destroy yourself with. We already know why the killing curse was avoided. It damages the soul. But what about the other abysses of dark magic? The ones that didn't just risk Azkaban, but guaranteed the loss of the mind? The compulsion of the Imperious Curse. The loss of self. The Imperious Curse? Imperio. It's classified as unforgivable, but unlike Avada Kedavra, it was often preferred by Death Eaters for two cynical reasons. It's highly versatile, and it leaves the caster's soul intact. You can make a foe betray their friends, hand over vital secrets, or commit murder without having to genuinely want them dead yourself. It's the perfect tool for a sociopath who prefers a clean getaway. But the dark wizards who used it frequently understood its insidious price. The curse doesn't just dominate the victim. It also has a profound, corrosive effect on the caster's mind. To successfully cast Imperio and maintain absolute control, you must essentially project your entire will into another person's mind. You are forcing your existence, your deepest desires, onto a living, resisting consciousness. Over time, this constant act of mental domination creates a narcissistic dependence on control. The caster's ego becomes bloated, their self-control erodes, and they begin to believe their will is law, not just over their victims, but over reality itself. It's an addictive power. The euphoria of total control makes the dark wizard unable to function without it. They lose the ability to compromise, negotiate, or even tolerate dissent. They become fragile tyrants, completely reliant on forcing submission. This is why powerful, frequent users of Imperio, like Barty Crouch Jr. or Voldemort, are prone to making spectacular tactical errors. Their need for absolute control blinds them to reality, leading them down a path of increasing cruelty and isolation, making them less cunning and more easily predictable. The victim loses their freedom, but the caster loses their ability to live without tyranny. They become a slave to their own power. The horror of the flesh. Severing curse. Some curses are feared because they are difficult to master. Others, like the flesh-severing curse, are feared because they are terrifyingly simple, and the effects are too much to bear. This curse, rarely mentioned in modern texts, was a gruesome staple of medieval dark magic. With a single, sharp incantation and a quick slashing motion of the wand, the spell causes large, deep ribbons of flesh to instantly peel away from the bone. Not a burn, not a cut, but a molecular detachment that leaves the victim immediately conscious and facing the horror of their own exposed anatomy. The simplicity is what made it monstrous. Unlike curses that require high-level intent, this spell needed only moderate power. It could be deployed rapidly and repeatedly in a battle, turning a simple skirmish into a scene of unmitigated body horror. Dark wizards were often immune to the sight of blood, but they weren't immune to the sheer grotesque inefficiency of this curse. It rarely killed instantly. It caused prolonged, excruciating, and unnecessary agony, leaving victims alive and screaming in shock and unbearable pain while they bled out. The sheer excess of the violence was what shattered the caster. It imprinted an image of absolute, primal suffering onto the mind. Historians recount cases of seasoned dark wizards, masters of torture, who cast the curse once and found themselves haunted by the victim's raw, immediate agony. They couldn't stop the flashbacks, the shaking, the nightmares. It was a curse that proved there is a limit to how much horror a human mind can inflict and absorb before it snaps. The parasite jinx, a slow, contemptible death. Finally, we come to a form of magic so contemptible, so deliberately cruel, that it was seen as beneath even the most chaotic dark lords, the parasite jinx. This isn't about flashy destruction or immediate pain. It's about slow, utter humiliation. The jinx, often targeting rival pure-blood families, caused the victim to become a host for magical parasites that fed on their vitality, slowly draining their health, energy, and even their physical attractiveness. The victim wouldn't die quickly. They would slowly decay, becoming frail, sickly, and utterly repulsive. The reason dark wizards rejected it was not morality, but contempt. They preferred to destroy their enemies with a decisive, brutal show of power. The parasite jinx was seen as the magic of a coward, petty, slow, and indirect. It was a reflection of the caster's own small-minded spite rather than their grand ambition, a psychological stain that marked the user as utterly petty. For a Death Eater who valued strength and terror, the parasite jinx was simply too contemptible to be